Hello everyone, this is Justice Takalani Magai. I'd like to welcome you to our Facebook Live video session. Introducing myself, Justice Takalani Magai, as I've told you, position. I'm a supervisory legal practitioner in the civil unit, Benoni Local Office, Legal Aid South Africa, the biggest law firm on the African continent. Today is our second Human Rights Month Facebook Live discussion. We are discussing Section 29. This stems from the Bill of Rights in our Constitution. That's Act 108 of 1996. And also, you are also aware that our Constitution is one of the best constitutions in the world. So Section 29 of the Bill of Rights, the right to basic education. If I may then, before I go on to read what it says, as you all know, March is Human Rights Month. And we are using this time as an organization to spread awareness of our human rights and also answer any questions you might have about any of the rights in the Bill of Rights. But today we will focus on Section 29, the right to basic education. And you are welcome to leave your comments and also questions about human rights. I will then read to you what Section 29 says word for word. Everyone has the right to a basic education, including adult basic education, and to further education, which the state, that's the government, through reasonable measures, that's where the treasury comes in, through their budget allocation, must take progressively available and accessible measures to ensure that everyone has right to basic education. Number two, everyone has the right to receive education in the official language or languages of their choice in public educational institutions when that education is reasonably practicable. In order to ensure the effective access to and implementation of this right, the state must consider all reasonable educational alternatives, including single medium institutions, taking into account equity, practicability, the need to redress the results of past racially discriminatory laws and practices. Everyone has the right to establish and maintain at their own expense independent educational institutions. That's where the IEB, Independent Education Board, comes into play. So the basic right is provided by the National Department of Education through funding which they get from National Treasury. And as you are all aware, we did have our budget speech a few weeks ago. The Minister of Finance did allocate 396 billion rands to the National Education Department, and that was the biggest allocation. Second one would be safety and security, and the third one was on social grants, which you also need to make sure we realize some of the rights in the Constitution, including the right to basic education. And to end off on the rights in the Constitution, everyone has the right to establish and maintain at their own expense independent educational institutions that do not discriminate on the basis of race, are registered with the state, and maintain standards that are not inferior to standards at comparable public educational institutions. And I will then wait to hear from you guys. Feel free, leave questions in any language you want. We will answer, get back to you. But then, whilst I'm waiting for your comments, I can talk to you about the right to basic education. As you are well aware, we have the right to freedom of movement, right to privacy, right to housing. However, the basic right to education, fortunately, trumps those rights. The state can, when it comes to right to housing, say we don't have adequate resources. The right to make sure that there's safety and security, they can say no, we don't have adequate resources. We can't have a police officer for each and every citizen. However, the Constitutional Court has held that when it comes to the right to basic education, the state cannot, under any circumstances, say that there are no resources to provide basic education, to make sure that we have institutions. That's where every primary school is there. It's built by the government, and ideally they should build the primary schools next to where the people are, so that then it also alleviates the need for our children to be traveling at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning, getting into cramped taxis and also transport systems. So they build the institutions, then they also have to provide adequate teachers to make sure that this right gets realized, because there would be no point saying that we have a right to basic education, however then the state does not do anything to make sure that that right is realized and also protected. So I've mentioned then they provide the teachers, and one thing which I also like, the basic education department also then provides feeding schemes for our children. So you give me a right to basic education and also adult education, you give me the teachers, but then I get to school hungry, I will not concentrate. So then one thing which the department does very well is they do have feeding schemes in most schools. This would be schools in poor communities, but even in schools which have affluence, they still provide a feeding scheme, so learners then will not feel left out. You see one of your friends opening a nice lunchbox, then you then feel left out. No, come lunchtime everyone will be eating, come tea time everyone will be eating. So then we then get to realize that right. To continue as well, when it comes to the issue of paying fees for school, there are schools which are no fee schools, and there are schools which are fee schools, as in like your parents have to pay some amount towards the upkeep of the school, admin with regards to hiring extra teachers. This would be the duty of the school governing body. They are in charge of the appointment and hiring of extra teachers. So now, on the issue of schools where you don't pay fees, under no circumstances must a child in our country be declined and or refused access to a school or to education because their parents are unemployed or their parents are struggling financially. Should you encounter a situation like that where as a parent or as a guardian you go to a school and they are refusing, number one, to take your child because you cannot afford the fees, you would then be entitled to report that school, because now they are discriminating against your child and or you as a parent. They should not. And also the law also provides that no public school should ask for a registration fee from parents and or a child. No public school should also say we have a assessment tests. You use the Gauteng online system to apply for your child to be accepted into a school. You pick the schools you want, but then there is, of course, times when they are open. You cannot wait until the last minute. The system has now been improved. It doesn't crash as it used to. Even the MEC, especially in Gauteng, Mr. Panyaza Lusuthi has taken pride in that fact that no, we have a system which can handle up to 25,000 plus minus hits per second on the website, so it won't crash like it did a few years ago. So now, reason I'm mentioning this part, so it will be open for registrations. You apply as a parent, there's no assessment, you fill out the details, then you of course will have to take the forms and other things to the school or the documents which they need to that school. On the issue of school fees, one thing I'm proud to announce is that Legal Aid South Africa is an organization. On our website we have a self-help portal, deals with administration of estates, that's wills and estates. It deals with school fees, I'll get to that part. It also deals with other aspects of the law like expungement of criminal records. My colleague Mr. Dick Kuboni did deal with the issue of arrest on the last live Facebook live chat, but I won't touch too much on that. But on the issue of expungements, so there is information what you need to follow to have your criminal record expunged. If you were watching the news yesterday, Mr. Mcebo Dlamini, he's the one from the Fees Must Fall campaign, Wits University. He was sentenced to a sentence of 2 years imprisonment for public violence, but it was suspended. However, now he has the issue of a criminal record, but the provisions are after 10 years, he can have that expunged. Now let's get back to school fees. On our self-help portal, we even have a template, a letter template, which you as a parent or guardian, if you want exemption from paying school fees, because no school can exclude you from attending school, or your child attending school because you are behind in your school fees or you can't afford the school fees. So you download the letter template, you then fill or complete the template, then you will then send it through to the school. It will be received by the school governing body. The school governing body has 30 days within which to respond to your request for full exemption, conditional exemption, and partial exemption. So the issue of full exemption is you as a parent, you tell the school that unfortunately, due to the current economic climate or circumstances beyond your control, you cannot afford to pay school fees for your child. However, you still want the right to basic education to be exercised and also realized. So the school then will then have no choice but to exempt your child from paying school fees. And also, if your child is exempted from paying school fees, then under no circumstances can the school then withhold their academic results at the end of the term and or end of the school year, saying that no, you still owe us 200 rands or 300 rands because you are fully exempted from that. Then you also get issues of conditional exemption. One of the requirements is that they will look, let's say you are employed as a parent or a guardian, they will look at the gross household income and see that does the school fees exceed more than 10% of the gross household income. If that's the condition, then you can be exempted from having to pay school fees. However, they might require you to attach your payslip, a letter from your employer, if you are employed, and on the case or in the case where you are not employed, an affidavit from the police station or even your local legal aid office, because we do have attorneys throughout the country, qualified attorneys that is. They can assist you with the drafting of that affidavit and have it commissioned. Then you take it to your local school. Affidavits don't only have to be commissioned by the police. There are commissioners of oaths which have been designated by the Minister of Justice as people who are entitled to administer the oath and also commission and certify certain documents. So please feel free regarding that. I also mentioned the fees must fall movement. I mentioned Mr. Mngebo Dlamini, amongst others. There was Mr. Kulu, who was released last year after having served at least 2 years in prison for having bent down, unfortunately, a police vehicle. Luckily for him, the President and Minister of Justice released him last year together with other detainees and also people who've been sentenced. Now, on the issue of fees must fall, the former President Jacob Zuma did state that education will now be free for everyone going to varsity. But unfortunately, the Department of Higher Education has to provide funding for all qualifying students. It does that through the National Financial Aid Scheme, that's NEFSAS. They provide funding to those qualifying students. However, there's an issue of the missing middle, where one of the requirements says up to 350,000 rands. So now the question is, what happens to those parents who earn over 350,000 rands? And that's where some of the issues come through, because looking at it, 50% funding is provided to those who qualify, but then what happens to the so-called missing middle? And that's where the students have continued fighting. As we speak, some universities have been shut down because now, on top of the issue of free education, there's the issue of accommodation as varsities have to, on top of providing education, also then provide funding for accommodation and provide adequate funding for accommodation. But then they do not have enough beds for all the learners, those who qualify. Then they also rely on private service providers to provide the beds. However, then the pricing becomes a problem because the university provides it at a cheaper amount, but then the private service providers, their prices are different. So now the students are also fighting over that. So it did state we have a right to basic education, and also if you look at section 29, it also says further education, and that's where tertiary institutions come in. So we cannot take this right easily or lightly. It is one of the most fundamental rights in our Bill of Rights, of course, together with the right to life, because if the right to life is violated, then the right to basic education, amongst other rights, cannot be realized. So we need to be mindful of that fact. I think I'm okay for now. We can take a break. Okay, I'm waiting for your questions and also your comments. Guys, feel free. And also it can be in any language you want. It can be Zulu, it can be Sotho. I'm fluent in all of our local languages. You can leave your comments. However, still speaking on the issue of what Legal Aid South Africa does, I would like to remind everyone that as an organization, we have 128 local offices throughout the country. We have 64 local offices and 64 satellite offices. We have a lot of legal practitioners. I would say over 2,200 legal practitioners and also support staff. So on top of that, we even have an advice line. So you can get to any of our local offices. You then can call our advice line on 0800 11 011. That is operating from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. Monday to Friday. And the beauty of the advice line is you don't have to speak English. Speak your home language you are comfortable in. Our consultants, who are also qualified paralegal officers, will then advise you. And the calls are recorded, by the way. We record it. Then should there be a need for you to visit one of our local offices, they will then also inform the local offices that we dealt with client X. He has an issue with a school. The school is refusing access to the child because of non-payment of school fees, or because there's an issue on discipline. Then they send you through to one of our local offices. But then the beauty of it, if you cannot call, for some reason, not everyone feels comfortable in making the first move, calling and things like that. On top of what we've done by having the advice line, you can even send a please call me to the following number, 079 835 7179. And guess what? We will call you back. We might not call you back next 10 minutes, but I can guarantee you we will call you back. One thing I like about our organization is that we pride ourselves on giving competent legal representation and a service. Yes, we concede there will be areas where we falter, but then we are here to improve. You tell us where we can improve. On the call back, we call you back, it gets recorded, then we advise you. We will not wash our hands of you and say, no, we don't do that, therefore see to finish. We will then find institutions which will help you with regards to what you can do to realize any of the rights in the Constitution. But Legal Aid South Africa is here to serve the public and also to educate the public, which is also what we are doing with our Facebook Live for today on Section 29, Bill of Rights, right to basic education, which cannot be realized unless there are adequate resources, which the government has to provide through the taxes which all of us pay. And also, you did see me holding up the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, available at each and every municipality, local office of the municipality, available at your local libraries, and also it's free, by the way. And the beauty of it as well, if you can't get it at your municipality, you can't get it at your library, you can even ask and request our national library. We have a national library in South Africa. They can also provide this. Even the Department of Justice can provide this. And for those who have access to the internet, it's freely, of course, freely available for you to download PDF format online. Then you can see all the rights as contained in the Bill of Rights, in the Constitution. If anyone is violating your right, then you can see what is the violation, what is the right, and then come to legal aid. Call our advice line, send the please call me, and also we encourage you to visit our local offices. And also, if you can't visit any of our local offices, going to your nearest local court, magistrates court, we have legal aid officers in each and every court. Then you ask for a legal aid officer, you tell them what your problem is, then they take down your details, then the local manager in the office will call you and make arrangements for us to come and make sure that your rights are protected, nothing gets violated. If I may take a drink break, guys, it's just water, H2O.